Hi everyone. Today I'm with Pat Pataranutaporn. I have a few questions that I had ready for you based on your research. Let's jump right to them. So your research shows that AI explanations can be so persuasive that they're sometimes even more persuasive than just fake news without explanations, right? This is scary in a day and age where fake news is everywhere. And so I was just wondering, what do you think is like the guardrails we can install, like against these smooth talking machines that we're surrounded with constantly?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I mean, right now, a lot of these generative AI, especially large language model, are trained to please the user. They create a behavior that we call sycophancy, which is how the machine try to sort of get the user always using it and get hooked to it. And that's why sometimes the model override sort of the factual correctness and the scientific information to please the user. If the user agree with certain perspective, it could explain why that idea or justify that idea with false explanation. So I think our research have shown that this sort of false explanation can be very, very dangerous. It can be very persuasive, as you mentioned. And I think the way that we can sort of potentially solve this is by rethinking how we train the model. So instead of having the incentive being getting the user attention or making it sort of please the user, we steer the model to sort of adhere to the fact, or using auto techniques such as retrieval augmentation for the model to be able to find the citation or the sort of the scientific backing of the argument. So I think this is not just a technical challenge but also a design challenge and also a value challenge as well. What do we want out of the AI? Do you want the AI to always make us happy, or do you want the AI to sort of educate us and make us get
Right.
closer to the truth, right?
And we definitely see different models trying to be a bit more, factually correct than just please,
Mhm.
right? But then that's on their end. What about us as users? What can we
Yeah.
to make sure that we're not just being pleased, but we're getting what we need?
That's a really good question. I mean, for the user, I think there are a couple of things that can be done. I think for one, practice critical thinking, or using this in the real world is really important. Don't just think of critical thinking as an exercise in the classroom, but really, when you see information, not just from the AI, but from the internet, social media, TikTok, don't just take the information as face value. Think about, okay, if the information seems too good to be true or seem very controversial, like it provoke your emotion to react negatively or strongly, you should ask, who could benefit from this information? Is there someone that want to manipulate my sort of emotion to share this piece or to react strongly to their gain, right? So I think this is the first thing is to sort of think critically with the piece of information we see. I think the second thing is always, when you see information that seems a little bit fishy, try to verify the information with credible sources, right? Like, don't just consume it, but see if other sources sort of say the same thing, or can you collaborate the information with other piece of information. And I think the last thing that I think is very fundamental to basically not just information but other thing as well, is to always sort of be curious, not just consume the information passively, but be curious and use that curiosity to sort of educate yourself of that topic. Maybe if you verify that that piece of information is a fake news, maybe be curious about what is actually the honest news behind it, or what is actually the scientific fact behind it, so that your sort of knowledge base is expanding, and that I think will become your immune system against this complex world where fake information are becoming more and more convincing. Yeah, curiosity, I think, is really, really important.
And then also the role of institutions that have to teach critical thinking, just like universities, right? That's our end, right? How to do it. But as we said, a lot of it is about making more models that balance this. So that's what my comes to my next question is like,
Mhm,
how do we balance helpfulness and humanness, right? Because there's a lot of talk around making AI more emotionally intelligent.
mhm.
We find ourselves in this walking this very fine line between helpfulness
Right,
and humanness. And so, what do you think? How should we make sure that chatbots are listening well, but not maybe too well? You know what I mean?
right. Yeah, that I think that's a really critical point, especially as these AI chatbot or companion chatbot are being deployed at scale. Um, I think what I think is interesting that you mentioned the word emotional intelligence, because I think people with emotional intelligence would not create toxic relationship, right? They would not, gaslight you, or they would not have this kind of red flag behavior. So I think when we think of intelligence, especially with AI, right now a lot of AI is designed to sort of, as I said, being sort of addictive, that they want people to come back to it or form relationship with it, when in fact the model, has sort of no real emotion in the same way that a human does, right? You can see a movie, but it's all like pretending, right? So no one would mistaken a really beautiful movie that is so emotional as that person in the movie having a real relationship with the audience, right? AI is sort of similar, but more interactive. So when you interact with this, platform, this AI chatbot that, try to, make friend with you or perform certain type of relationship, all of these are performatives, and have no sort of real emotional behind it. It can pretend to have it, but still, from our current scientific research, there's no evidence showing that this model have anything deeper than just the performance layer. So in that case, what we should hope for this model is that their interaction, or the way that they interact with us, should promote human interaction, right? So instead of designing the AI to be the source of relationship where people go and seek companionship or compassion to elevate loneliness or things like that, the AI should be designed to actually help people build social and emotional skill, to understand themselves better, understand their emotion better, understand how to make friends and have relationship with other human in the real world. I think that is the best use case of AI, is to sort of help us be human, not just, sort of pretend to be a pseudo human, but make us, addicted to it. Because in that case, it will sort of degrade our ability to be human, to interact with one another, to have friends, right? Because friends are not always agreeing with you, or are not always sort of going with the direction that you want it,
Right.
or want your friend to go, right? Human relationship is more complicated, has nuances, and the thing is we need to respect each other agency, right? That the AI, doesn't care about. So I think we need to make AI help us become better human, not use the AI as another human that we have relationship with.
Yeah, I think that, clears it up mostly. We can move on to a very different part of your work, that you worked on Open Dance Lab, right?
Mhm.
Text to text tradition.
Yeah,
Very interesting projects, very fun, definitely to read.
yeah.
Yes, you invited AI to the dance floor essentially, right? With heritage as well. But that is a very, sensitive topic to a lot of people. There's,
Mhm.
a lot of people consider that sacred. And so how do we make sure that, the AI doesn't stand on the toes of heritage and doesn't, cause more negative feelings from their end, the consumer's end?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. I mean, the AI is like auto technology. It can be used for good or for bad, depending on how we design it, and especially how do we design the interaction between the human and the AI. So in the context of cultural heritage, I think with with similar to other technology, right? You can use it in a disrespectful way, taking things out of context, or steal human creativity and turn it into some commodity. I think that is a really problematic way of using the technology, right? But you can also think about a way that technology can sort of enhance the cultural heritage and also support that deep understanding of intercultural or inter sort of generational knowledge and wisdom, especially with elder that have deep cultural knowledge, right? How do we bridge that gap? So in this project, I work with an artist, a choreographer who have deep knowledge in the traditional dance of Thailand. I'm from Thailand, so I want to think about how AI could sort of bridge that gap. And what we work on is an AI system that sort of basically learn the traditional principle of Thai choreography and allow us to reimagine new type of choreography that doesn't exist before, while still preserving the authentic, principle and practice of that tradition. So this, in a way, you kind of create sort of a representation, an interactive representation that allow the tradition to evolve and also, move forward with the future generation. Uh,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think the key here is that you need to, work with people that have deep understanding, and they need to be the one that judge whether this is like, doing good or not, right? And then also be respectful to the original cultural heritage and use it in sort of the respectful manner. I think that's how you can use it in a way that support rather than diminish the cultural heritage of different culture.
Yeah, it
Culture.
definitely resonates with us too. In Armenia, our heritage is so important, and keeping it alive means to reinvent it, to
Yeah.
again and again, to give it new life, right? So I feel like it's a lot of the time slept on what AI can do for us in this category. So really interesting research. I definitely would encourage everyone to take a look at it. So another question that I wanted to ask, like, in your view, what's the secret sauce for designing technology that supports creativity instead of overshadowing human creativity? Because this is
Yeah.
a very controversial topic right now. People are talking a lot about using AI correctly in the creative space instead of being just afraid of AI replacing jobs in the creative space.
Yeah, I think one thing to remind ourselves is that I think creativity is always a relative term, right? When things become sort of normalized, then creativity is something outside the box. Of course, AI help or can recreate certain artistic style or mimic certain artistic practice very well. But then when that thing become very common, I think the creative artist would be the one that sort of show the world or show the society a new way of looking at the problem or a new way of looking at sort of the world, right? I think that is what is really powerful about artistic practice and human creativity is that it's always sort of reinventing itself, right? When you have new medium of new technology, of course it's going to open up new ways of doing things, but at the same time it's also democratize or um make certain sort of practice become sort of more commodified, which I think could sometimes be problematic. So for me, the way to use sort of AI creatively is to sort of use AI to sort of strengthen your own unique voice. As I said, the AI doesn't have the emotion or doesn't have the perspective of its own. It's like a tool that can amplify in any direction. You can use it to amplify like plagiarism or, amplify sort of the stealing of human creativity by, reproducing certain artistic style without the permission or stealing sort of the artistic work as a data set, right? This could be really problematic because people are not being compensated, similar to like you can steal other people art without AI, right? The same laws should apply. Because the process is essentially the same. You're taking someone artistic license or artistic work without giving them credit or compensating properly, right? So I think the same rules still apply. But then when you have the tool, the question is, what is your own unique perspective and unique voice in the world, right? Sure, today AI could, help turn, the sketch into animation very quickly, or the AI could help maybe, turn your bullet point of story into, a potential, script for, television or TikTok video or whatever. Things are becoming easier and frictionless. But the deep question is not, what you can make, but why are you making it? And, what is sort of the unique take or what is sort of the expression that you are making or that are being kind of embedded into it, right? I think today we obsess with content, but not really about what is actually about the content, but the number or the amount of content itself. Like people are posting 100 times or even more a day, right? To stay updated, to stay relevant and to make the algorithm pick up their video, but less so on the quality or on sort of the originality of the content. So I think what I would encourage people to think about AI and creativity is to really ask what are we using the creativity for, and believe that the creativity can be really powerful force that help humanity, rethink ourselves and rethink the world. And I think this topic is not being talked enough. when we talk about AI and human creativity, we often focus on the medium rather than the message itself. Yeah.
Right. So maybe in that case, if it's just the numbers game, we can be blaming more the social media or the algorithms that they encourage instead of the AI that's generating this content in the first place. Because if you play it just as a numbers game, it doesn't matter if you use AI or not. As you said, you can always produce bad art if you know don't focus on the quality. So yeah, definitely, I agree that's not being talked enough, and maybe it's really shaking the art sphere, like creative sphere in general. So maybe we just have to learn to work around it instead of fight with it. Essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, if you want to do the number game, you can basically steal the most popular clip in YouTube and recreate it, right? But what is the meaning in that? And I think if majority of people are doing that, then it leave a plenty of room for really creative people to do something that's totally different.
Right.
Like you don't need to compete in that sort of number game. And I think as I said, AI could be used to amplify in any direction. So depending on your sort of your creative direction and your creative agency to figure out.
I
Yeah.
think when people complain about this, they really are complaining more about how the volume of what we call AI slop, right, has become so great in these spaces that it's harder to find more authentic work that resonates with people and that make them want to, continue or get inspired maybe to do their own thing. Right? Maybe that's really the argument that we're hearing.
I mean, I agree. I mean, that's why, traditional education, right? Like people are saying, well, traditional education is dead. But I think what I really appreciate about sort of the current, well, not not all the thing about traditional education is good, but I think what I really appreciate is that the understanding of history, right? You understand how things develop. And when you understand that, you can sort of predict or think a little bit about what would be the future direction. And of course, you can take this in the optimistic way or pessimistic way. But I think having a deeper understanding of the history, and especially the rich human history, then you can understand sort of different voices and also the diversity of ideas. We should not just paying attention to the most recent things that make us lose sight of the longer trajectory of human evolution. And I think, as you said, I think the slop is just one of every generation of new technology, they're always like slop, like the early day of advertisement, the early day of photography, they're always things that doesn't really make sense, or thing that might be less inspirational compared to later work that are being more developed and more mature, right? It takes a long time for cinema to find its own voice or find its own style, photography as well, right? So hopefully, I think I'm optimistic that humanity will come together and figure out what is the future aesthetic of our generation, and also that the truly creative people will find a way to shine among all these sort of number games, as you said.
Yeah, that is very well put. Amazing, right? So actually, you touched upon traditional education, and that brings me to the next question. It's a great segue. It's like you showed that LMs can judge research, right, really well, like as well as maybe human.
Yeah.
Yeah, research, seasoned, researchers
Yeah.
that way. But it feels like you proved that they also have the same kind of biases, like the Ivy charm, right? They
Yeah.
all too. So how do you make sure that AI doesn't replicate the same biases that human researchers have, and give
Yeah.
everyone an equal chance in their research work?
That's a really good. That I mean, is really really important question. I think when we say that human have bias, you know what is interesting about the bias human is that we could override them if we are aware of them, right? If I know that or have by a certain topic, then I could develop potentially an objective evaluation to sort of, okay, I'm trying to remove this bias by being objective in how I evaluate something, right? AI, on the other hand, is a probabilistic, system. It could say that it doesn't have bias. We've seen, my colleague, Kathy, actually, from the effective computing group, have shown that AI bias is more interesting and had nuance than that, because when you ask the model how it objectively how it used or how it sort of evaluates certain things, it tend to say that it's, based on objective evaluation, but when you look at the output, it's actually very, very biased. So that is a little bit different than a person where when they develop objective evaluation, they could potentially sort of elevate or try to diminish the bias as much as possible. AI, on the other hand, these two things are completely different. So I think, the way to use AI to create this sort of fair judgment is to always have sort of the objective evaluation and also a human supervision, right? When the AI say that it doesn't have bias, a human needs to verify it and making sure that the output, also reflect that, not just something that the AI say or claim, right? So I think this is something that is very, very important. Is that we should not take AI as face value when it say that it's, treating each of the applicant or treating all the decision fairly and equally. We should not, take that as face value, but really verify it. Yeah.
And I remember also in your work, you mentioned not adding demographic information when we post something to AI and ask it to evaluate, right? That's something we can control and we can do to make sure that, AI doesn't keep on like the IV charm or even
Yeah.
like biases like that.
Totally. I think sometimes it's also difficult, right? Because you want the information to be part of the the evaluation. Like people often say that the more data, the better, right? The question is, what is the meaningful? Yeah, exactly. It's not always, but the question is like, what is the most important data that we should keep? Sometimes people say, well, name and last name doesn't seem to have problem, right? Everyone have unique names, but our study of also shown that the model could have a bias that was based on how it perceived different name as more female or male or rich or poor, famous or not famous. These are sort of implicit bias that are not, in the data set, right? Like we don't have that sort of, even if we remove certain characteristic like female or male or rich or poor, the name itself still serve as the implicit signifier. So I think the question is like, well, how do we know whether the model will be able to have the bias based on even with minimal information that we put in? So I think verification is always important after all the process. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Very important. So to come back to our audience, which is a lot of them are teens and are listening right now and looking up to you and your work, what would you tell them? Like, what do you think teens today have that you or I in our generation doesn't or didn't have back in the day? So what is their edge? What is like the thing that should motivate them to get up and do some interesting work that motivates them?
Yeah, no, I think a lot about that question, especially, I also consider myself as sort of a young generation for people in academia right now. You're thinking about AI and the future of humanity, right? So I think a lot about that question. And for me, I feel like, AI actually make us really make us sort of reflect on what is actually our value. Because things that we could take for granted or things that we, tend to sort of, push back, especially like this deep philosophical question, we tend to say that, well, we'll think about it when we are rich, or we will think about it when we are successful, or whatever. But now, that future is sort of challenging us to think about this question now, right? It's kind of like my colleague Brendan from the Cosmos Institute actually said that AI is actually creating a scenario where we have philosophy on deadline because we need to figure out this philosophical question very soon. Um, and I think for me, what I realized is that as the tool becoming more and more powerful, human agency and human sort of unique perspective is become more and more important. Especially, these two are really, it's easy for them to sort of homogenize everything and try to find sort of, an optimized single representation or single answer that maybe is an average of everything. But, we don't want to be reduced to that, right? Humanity is more complicated than that. So I think in order for us to solve the challenging issue of our time, climate change, inequality, and all of this, we need more and more diverse idea, not just one optimized solution. No one solution, even if the best solution, fit everything. So how do we help people cultivate more active and different ways of thinking about the world and deeper way of thinking about the world? I think is more important, especially like every day there's new AI that come out. And I oftenly, see that they fall short in sort of the human um understanding, like things about deep knowledge require sometimes not just paying attention to the most recent thing, like AI with retrieval augmentation tend to pull the most recent citation or recent knowledge to sort of form the answer, but sometimes the best answers in the past, and this past is sort of being hidden more and more from the sort of modern day perspective. So how do we find the ancient wisdom that are still relevant to the modern day context? I think that's also another challenge to think about. And my last point is that all the challenges that I mentioned, climate change, inequality, creativity, all of these are not going to solve itself. You cannot just prompt the AI to say, AI, now solve climate change, and then the climate change is solved, right? No, it doesn't work that way. Or you can say, AI, go solve inequality in my area, and the AI agent will go and do that. I mean, none of that happened, right? I think it's only people that, with technology or with, understanding and capability could do that. So I think, in the same way that, car can help us go from one place to another place faster, we need to think about where do we go. And I think, solving this grand challenge require human with dedication, creativity, and motivation and inspiration and also aspiration for a better world. And that these people can use all these technology to bring that closer to reality. So as long as the world still facing challenge, as the world still have inequality, as long as the climate change is not a solved problem, humanity have a role in the future, and technology can be part of that. Yeah.
As long as there are problems, humans will be busy solving them, right? No matter
Yeah.
is AI in the picture or not, right?
Right.
I like what you said about how it seems like AI is bringing some philosophical issues, but with deadlines, that's new, because usually philosophy takes its sweet time and never has deadlines, and you have conversations.
And philosophy department is not well funded, so there are not a lot of philosophy right now. But I hopefully, with AI doing some of these mundane tasks, people can focus their time on this important issue, right? So that's, I think, the optimistic part. But again, there are many companies that are sort of capitalize on human attention, try to make human as thoughtless as possible because they're easy to manipulate and easy to advertise to, right? But I think Gen Z and young generation, they know all of that. They don't want to be manipulated. They don't want to be gaslight, right? So I'm optimistic that they will be the one that will have their own agency and take charge of their destiny.
Definitely. So yeah, as we talked about, like teens, they are both the biggest consumers right now of everything in the in the world of AI, but also they should be, approaching it with the idea of like we're also the future of it, right?
Mhm.
So that's another thing. So can you mention any, where would you start if you had, if you just started in the space of AI and you didn't know that this is your calling, and where would you start?
Yeah, I mean, for me, my fascinating with AI came from, watching a cartoon, an anime when I was a kid. And in that anime, it's called Doraemon. It's sort of an old anime now. It was one of the Japanese classic anime about a robot cat that came from the 22nd century to help a boy develop into a best version of himself. And to me, I think it's like, when I saw that, I was like, this is the future that I want to see, right? I want technology that help human flourish, not technology that do the opposite, or not the technology that dominate human life and make human become thoughtless machine, right? We want technology to make human more human. So that sort of vision that I saw in the anime sort of inspired me to work on the work that I do today. And I feel like for many people, finding inspiration, from the weirdest place. I think the place that have the most inspiration are the places that most people overlook or haven't looked before. So I think, finding inspiration in all these weird places, I think is a great start. And then think about what can you do and what's your own unique voice. And sometimes, you don't have that, or you don't know that from the first place, right? Everyone is born, when you're a baby, you cannot even speak, right? But you cultivate and learn these things over time, and your unique perspective will emerge as long as you sort of, living your life and learning and enjoying. Don't take learning as like an assignment, but take it as a way to experience the world, right? We are already born and we are all going to die. That's what Toni Morrison said. She said that the thing that we need to do is doing something that we respect, and we can find meaning in between, right? So I really love that philosophy, that, you can just enjoy whatever, learning along the way as the world change, as everything change, as technology change, embrace that change and think about whether that change is good for you or good for humanity, and think about maybe little pieces or little things that you can do that will have impact. And I think if more people are thinking in that way, then I think humanity will be fine. Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. So as I really liked how you said about like motivation being a bigger factor right now when it comes to pushing the envelope more than just technical ability. In some ways, it looks like AI is leveling the field for everyone, right? In that way.
Well, it's always kind of like that. Like, I mean, before we have technology, right? Writing or, you doing things with our hand, like everyone is born with two hands. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people are born with two hands, and we are born sort of equal a little bit in a way that we are sort of we
It's a part.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's sort of important that we think that, if other people can do that, then, why not me, right? So I think motivation is a really important factor, as you said.
Yeah, I feel like teenagers right now watching should be, decently motivated to start their own thing and pursue their dreams. So thank you so much for your time here and
Thank you.
giving us this amazing talk and this opportunity. It's
Yeah.